Comox Valley Canoe Racing Club, and I'm sure he knows how to use PowerPoint and things.
Thank you very much. Hi there, Mr. Mayor and Council. Thank you for having us. We are from the Comox Valley Canoe Racing Club, and I've got quite a presentation here, and I'm actually going to glaze over a fair amount of it. I figured the details are there. You can come back to it if you like. I'm going to kind of outline our situation and at the end ask specifics if you're interested. So right now we're in a situation where, well, we paddle outrigger canoes. We paddle also stand-up paddle boards and surf ski kayaks. So we're essentially a paddling club. We operate out of the Courtenay Air Park. There's a compound there right next to the Air Park Cafe and the boat launch. We have been there since 2005 in that specific location. And just recently we share that compound with the Comox Valley Rowing Club. And just recently in the last few years we've seen a rather sizable explosion, shall I say, in participation in paddling in the Comox Valley. So over the last year we've had discussions with city staff about how we can possibly make that space work, expand the space, and do whatever we need to do to maintain our location there. And they recommended at our most recent meeting that we approach Mayor and Council directly and present our case and see if we can kind of engage city staff further in discussions and planning how that space can be used moving forward. So starting at the beginning, we paddle outrigger canoes primarily. It's a Polynesian origin to this sport. And originally these boats were used to gather food, travel from island to island, to communicate with other settlements, and to go to war, to explore new territories. Fast forward to current day, and these are recreational devices for us, but the hub of paddling is still in Hawaii and Tahiti and these sort of Polynesian areas where it's warm. We have a fairly sizable community of paddlers right up and down the west coast of North America, and that's created a fairly sizable hub of paddling interest in Vancouver Island and the Lower Mainland as well. Our history started in 1996. Pictured here you see Annie Bolding, who was one of the original ladies that started the group. She's very embarrassed right now. And these ladies purchased a 600-pound canoe from Victoria, brought this thing up and established it on a waterfront property. And they dragged this thing up to 100 meters up and down the beach on driftwood logs to launch the boat, run their practices, and drag it back again when they were finished to put it to where it was stored. Despite this situation, these ladies, they were forced to be reckoned with, and they were traveling around the world and achieving podium finishes pretty much everywhere they went. They also established a youth program, which is quite interesting. Fast forward here to 2005. And they managed to relocate the compound with a few moves in between to the current location where it is now. So in partnership with the rowing club, the canoe club approached the city. The city was very supportive, as they always have been, and here we are. So as a result of that location, interest in paddling grew, the men's club thrived, the junior program thrived, and things have carried on to present day. So I'm just going to kind of show you a few photos here. It kind of gives you an idea of what the sport's all about. The one interesting thing about the sport and as it's evolved is that although we've got a pretty hardcore group of intense paddlers, which you might notice by the smell of the jerseys we're wearing right now, we've also got a really strong recreational group. So we've got a very strong interest in people that hit the water during the daytime, and they're there for health and wellness. They're not there to win races. So we've kind of got competitive paddlers and recreational paddlers all under kind of the same crew. Today we've got 68 active members in the club, ranging sort of in the 30s to the 65-ish plus range. And just in the last year we saw a 25% growth in our membership, which was pretty impressive. We've got men's, women's, and mixed competitive teams. We've got a very growing daytime paddling crew, which is great. And we've got a very quickly growing family membership base, which is exciting for me because I have 2 young boys and I'm really interested in reviving a junior program. So we're quite active. We're very busy from the compound. We run anywhere between 1 and 3 practices each day of the week, all year round. Sometimes it's dark, sometimes it's light. So we're pretty organized and pretty active. We've got people coming to and from the water using personal boats, so single, double outriggers, surf skis, and stand-up paddle boards. and we host one big major race every year, which is the Comox Island Iron this year coming up. We also host Tuesday night regular races, and we host coaching clinics, which happen from our compound about once a month. So coming up this spring, we have the Comox Island Iron race, which is a 2-day event. We've got about 25 or 30 clubs that come to the Comox Valley from the US and Canada, and we converge on the Comox Valley for 2 days of racing. So Saturdays is 6-man outrigger races, and Sundays is small boat races. So it's a pretty big attraction to the valley and a big deal for our club. Our club's always been well run in a really good financial position. We've seen a big increase in revenues over the last year. But just a point of, I mean, we're not rich, but we're well managed, shall we say. And we managed to purchase a $35,000 carbon fiber racing canoe last year. So that's just from club savings and from our own means, which is a pretty good feat if I say so. So a quick look at where we're at. So this is the club compound. So you see 50-50 division with the rowing club over here and our club over here. So these are 6-person boats. They're 45 feet long by about 8 feet wide rigged. So we've got 2 of those boats right now, but our club currently owns 3 of them. So with the growth in the club, we're seeing sort of a lack of seats, and the fancy new boat that we just bought we can't use because we don't have space for it. In addition for that, this is really not ideal storage for, you know, a $4,000 boat. And what we need ideally in the long run, actually, sorry, before we go back there, the tubes back there are storing 2 double outrigger canoes. So if we move forward here, within the next 2 years, to be able to stay in the same space, we're going to need space for 4 6-man canoes, at least 4 double canoes, some kind of organized rack space for up to 20 small boats, which will include single and double outriggers, surf skis, and stand-up paddleboards. We need space for a safety boat, which is very important. Hydro and water to the compound is important both for boat maintenance but also to maintain the city's property. And one thing in planning future space is that if we're to expand our space, we need to think about protection for our expensive boats. So we either need to look at a roof over the entire compound or selective covers for boats that are particularly at risk. Carbon fiber boats don't like UV. So a quick little case study, we can look at the Kelowna Paddle Center. So the Kelowna Paddle Center started in 2000 with a very small group just like ours. They did not have water access, so they would drag their boats from storage to the water, practice, and drag it away again. By 2014, of course, there's quite a process along the way. They engaged the City of Kelowna, and the City of Kelowna actually allowed access to this club to a waterfront property with a house and a fairly sizable lot. And in that space, they created a true paddle center, and they were big into outrigger paddling, but also surf ski paddling, stand-up paddleboarding, and they've even got a youth K1 program, which I believe is feeding a national program as well. So as a result of this facility being set up, membership grew from 27 to 350 people in 3 years, creating a paddling culture in the city and, of course, achieving both the municipality and the club's objectives. So looking forward, as far as our club goes, minute and a half. As far as our club goes, we wanted to make sure if we're going to stay in the air park and stay in the city of Courtenay, we're lining up with the city's objectives. So we looked through all sorts of city documentation and came up with, I mean, there's objectives to encourage blueway access, there's sports and recreation initiatives and all these things, which are great, but very specifically, the official community plan is focused on developing the air park and the marina at the air park, focusing on paddling activities. So I thought that's a pretty good alignment of objectives. So we're at a point right now, we're in a bit of a space crunch. We have this fancy boat that everybody wants to paddle, and we really don't have access to it because we've got to bring it from a farm down to the water. We've got a very quickly growing club, and we need to start thinking about some way to manage this and expand the access to space so that we can continue operating. So, thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Carl. That was a great presentation, and it's generated a lot of interest. First, we have Councillor McCullum.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for the presentation. That was very informative. I'm curious if you think that the space that is there that you're currently using could be upgraded, or like what is your vision for the club going forward and how the city could help with that, because I mean, it does look like a really small space, and I'm just concerned that if we're upgrading a space that's already too small and your club is expanding, that you're going to quickly run into a similar problem in a short amount of time.
Right, and that's very true. We've had some really good discussions with the city staff already,
Oh, okay.
and they've engaged someone to help us, Tim O'Brien, to help us look at things, but we haven't got into details. So I would say the best approach would be to ask city staff how they think that can work. We can look at our needs. We can even do some drawings to figure out where things need to go. And I don't know. I think it's possible, but I'm not the one that knows what's mandated for that space. So I'd like to sort of just say, let's talk about it and see what we can come up with.
But the vision is to try and use the space that's there, not relocate to somewhere nearby, or
Well,
would it be any of those?
It's an ideal location.
Okay.
I mean, not only do they have awesome bacon and eggs after practice, we have this beautiful waterway, and in most tides, like it takes a pretty low tide for us not to go out, and there's channels that we can navigate if there's an experienced steersman. So we have protected waters. We can practice year-round. It's accessible to both skilled and not so skilled paddlers. It's beautiful. It's central so that City of Courtenay residents can access us easily. I mean, you can come from Comox or Cumberland and still get down here for practice, and I can still get back before anybody knows I'm left the office. So yeah, it's ideal location. It's just a matter of how that space can be allocated.
That's great. Yeah, there's public washrooms there too, isn't there?
It's our clubhouse.
Yeah.
Unofficial.
And just one other question. Are you, as a club, planning on doing some type of like investment sharing with the city, or do you see the city taking on the whole facility cost? And do you know what the arrangement was with the Kelowna Club? If it was, which
I
of those?
think, I don't know, specifically I can dig into the financial arrangements with the Kelowna Club. Again, we've had discussions with city staff, and there is an understanding that there will be an informal lease, which will mean a lease
yeah.
payment of sorts.
Okay.
As far as capital cost to set it up, well, again, we can talk about how to do that. I mean, I made it look like we're well off. We're not well off. We can afford what we do. We save a long time to buy this fancy boat. We need the equipment to keep people paddling, but we have the means to look into options as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and next we have Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for the presentation, Carl. So just to clarify, you're really looking for council support to move forward with the discussion with staff and find some solutions. The two questions I have are about kids programming and the cost to join the club. And I wonder if you could just speak a bit more about what kind of programming you have to get kids into the sport and what the cost is to join your club.
Sure. Well, initially we don't have any official kids programs now. Well, Tuesday nights I did start running kids races from the spit, so I dropped a boy off and I had suckers so that a few kids could show up and they could run their race just before we ran our race. Because it's kind of a family thing, the Tuesday night paddles, and we like to get everybody there. We all sit and have non-alcoholic beverages and stuff after racing. You know, it's, we all enjoy the beach atmosphere. So it's a family event. As far as specific kids programming goes, we're not there yet. Again, like I said, I'm planning to get it in there. As far as family access goes, an individual membership is $250 and a family membership is $350. And it really just takes a couple of us with kids to have a steersman and maybe a front seat, and we fill the rest of the boat with kids and start working at it. So it's like I'd say we're that close to start getting kids on the water. It just hasn't quite got there yet.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks very much.
And we have Councillor Theos.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, Carl, that was a really good presentation, solid information, and I did have the fortune of actually bumping into one of your members yesterday at the fitness center, Dustin Porter, so he was upset he wasn't going to be here, but he gave me some very exciting information about what you're planning on doing, so it was wonderful to bump into one of the fittest guys I know. You know,
He says that you beat him, though.
Sorry?
He says you beat him out on certain club
Yeah, Jacob's
competitions.
Ladder. Yeah, no, just barely. You know, and I see stand-up paddleboard as being like one of these extremely popular new activities that are going on. When I was in Europe, so many people were doing it. So I think it's great to see that paddling has taken on, you know, in BC a bit of some recognition, and obviously your group is growing as I heard yesterday, how fast it's growing and repeated by what you were saying today. So very exciting. And there's obviously some economic spin-offs because, as you just said, everyone gets together and gets together for a little meal afterwards or whatnot, or some social time. So it's good news. The only question I would have is in regards to insurance, because again, you're going to be talking with the city and having some communications in there. Is insurance an issue with you guys, or is it fairly attainable for your members and for that area there?
As far as personal insurance goes, our association, the Canadian Outrigger Racing Association, holds our club insurance. Specifically as for property insurance, I don't know. I thought maybe Koya can answer. Our boats are insured. Yeah, okay. So our boats are insured. As far as what arrangement the city would require for use of that space, again, that can be addressed when we start getting into conversations with them.
Thanks, Carl. Good luck.
Thank you.
And next we have Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for the presentation, and I'll have to give a nod to Annie Boulding. I'm assuming you're the Boulding of Strathcona Park fame. I knew your dad. I've capsized in the water off the west coast of Vancouver Island on a Strathcona Park Lodge kayak trip, so I'm all for improving water safety. I'm just curious, Carl, there's a number of other water-oriented clubs in the valley. You share the current space with the rowing club, but you haven't mentioned any collaboration with them in this effort. There's also a Dragon Boat Club. I don't know where they keep their boats, but I'm just wondering what the possibilities are of working together with the other water interests in the valley towards what you're advocating for here.
Sure. The rowing club and we have a good relationship with the rowing club. Like I said, we've shared space for the last many years, 2005. So the challenge, I mean, we're kind of on the way both clubs have worked over the years is we hit an upswing and they are maybe not so active, and then they hit an upswing and maybe we're not so active. So at this point, they're still active, they're still doing their thing, and they still need space. We're willing to put resources into increasing our facility. I think they're just happy where they're at right now. So that's why I haven't really included them too much. I think whatever we want to do now is essentially for our purposes, and they're just happy with things the way they are. So we've had that discussion to a degree, again, with city staff, and that was the way forward, is that they're happy with the space allocation they have, and we really want to push a little bit. Yes, there's a Dragon Boat Club. I believe they're out of Comox. Comox Marina. Andrea Keenan works there. We have talked about potentially that being a location for us, but we like it where we are. And yes, collaboration of paddle sports is a big deal, and we often think paddling is paddling. So if you're paddling a kayak or a stand-up paddleboard or a outrigger or a dragon boat, I mean, half the people here come from a dragon boat background. So yes, we collaborate. As far as space goes, again, a paddle center like Kelowna, that's what happened, is they exploded because of creating this space, and that means multidiscipline. I think we need to think of baby steps. Right now we have a sort of a 5-year need to create space and have access to up to 4 boats, and through that things go. So,
But presumably if something happened in the space you're using right now that you share with the rowing club, they'd need to be involved in that.
yes, and they are part of the discussion.
Great, okay, thanks.
Thank you.
And we have Councillor Morin.
Hi, Carl. Thank you for the presentation. I'm wondering about the Kelowna model, the centre, if it included or if it includes sort of the tourism aspect of paddling, because you're looking at more the club and the programming that you're doing for local folks mostly, but you did kind of touch on the tourism piece. So I just wondered if that's part of the vision in terms of making a connection with folks visiting as well, or is it primarily for the club and local programming?
How can I answer that? Yes, I guess in a way, I'd say tourism isn't our primary objective. But that being said, if you're a paddler and you're going somewhere on holidays, you're going to find a local club. And that's happened with us a couple of times in the last year, where somebody's come into the town and they wanted to jump in and train with us or paddle with us through that period. So for us, I think in the near future, tourism isn't a big part of what we can do, but we're certainly open to anybody jumping in a boat with us. Kelowna, how they've sort of I think as for rentals probably is the extent of what they've done for tourism. But we do have the Comox Valley Kayak Center right there beside us, and they're definitely taking care of people for rentals and that kind of thing in that area.
All right. I don't see any other questions. One of the questions, I got a couple. One, you talked about that first 600-pound boat. So what's the carbon fiber one weigh?
150.
All right.
Yeah. Well, even our regular boats, the two boats in that photo, those are 400-pound boats.
Yeah.
We can still move those pretty well. So the carbon fiber boats are a game changer competitively.
Yeah, you could almost like portage with those things or something in comparison, I guess. I think most of the questions were asked, and one question that I had, and maybe you covered this, was whether or not you guys are in the rec guide, like if you provide any kind of courses or programming through for people in the Comox Valley.
That has been brought up a few times, and I think it's something that we really need to explore. We're a very active and all hands on deck kind of club, but additional programming takes people that are able to take on that programming. So a couple of things that were brought up was getting involved with the rec guide and rec programming, but also I believe the city of Courtenay has a wellness week, so we were talking about potentially opening up the doors to the city and city staff to come out and join us in a boat once in a while too. So all things that I think should be looked at this point. We're pretty flat out doing what we're doing, and as we grow, there's more people to engage in those activities, I think.
Excellent. Well, with that, I want to thank you very much for your presentation. And as I mentioned before, with delegations, it'll come back to us at a future meeting, and we'll go from there. Sounds like there's a lot of different potential moving parts and things to kind of consider, but we'll look at that when it comes forward. And just because it looks like there'll be a few people leaving, we'll just take a bit of a break here, let everybody who wants to go, unless you want to stay, we got a very exciting meeting as always, but if you do have to get somewhere, we'll give you about 5 minutes to clear the room. Thanks.